Alright, so for my FedEx project, I decided to focus on the profitability of alternative energy and specifically solar energy. And so I chose four of the top American solar companies to study, and I analyzed their growth and revenue in coordination with the overall growth in the industry. And here are my findings. So first, I'll just start with what is alternative energy. So alternative energy, it refers to any zero emission energy source, and the most widely formed uh, used alternative energy sources are solar, wind, and hydropower. So solar power is generated when sunlight is used to generate electrical energy. And the most common arrays used to generate energy are photovoltaic panels. And solar panels are composed of like a different mixture of two different semiconductors with different charges. And so what this does is when sunlight strikes the panels, electrons are knocked loose, and they actually fall into this junction between the two panels, which generates an electrical current. And so this is how solar power is generated. And so I decided to focus on SunPower, SolarCity for solar, and SunEdison for my project. So you might ask, how do these companies generate revenue? Do they manufacture panels? Do they install them? Or charge utility companies to use their clean energy? Well, some of these companies actually do all three and are some of the most vertically integrated businesses I've ever seen. So SunPower has the longest track record among the four, having initially gone public in 2005, and it had excellent performance in 2013 and figured among the top 5 fundraisers among U.S. solar firms. So that's generating probably capital aside from selling their products. It's also led the way in one of the biggest emerging themes in solar, which is leasing. And so what these leasing programs are intended to do is there's no installation fee. You don't actually pay for the panels, but what you do is you pay a monthly fee for a certain period of time, about $100 or $150. And this may seem like a lot, but you're no longer paying for your electric bill now. And so some people pay $200, $300, $400 a month for their home electric bill, and so $100 to $150 a month is not much in comparison. And after a certain period of time, usually anywhere between 6 to 15 years, after it's been fully paid off, you no longer have to pay these fees. So once the initial what would be the installation fee is recouped, you don't have to pay it back again. And so in 2013, SunPower had a net income of $95 million. SolarCity is the next one I studied, and it's actually, interestingly enough, chaired by Elon Musk, who famously revolutionized the electric vehicle and space industry through his companies Tesla and SpaceX. And unlike SunPower, SolarCity does not manufacture its own cells, but focuses on being an all-in-one provider. What this means is they really focus on the consumer and designing your personal array, installing the cells, and dealing with the necessary permits and maintenance, which might be a hassle for just the everyday homeowner. And so they focus on making the experience very easy and simple. So although SolarCity is the largest residential solar panel provider, the company actually suffered a net loss in 2013 despite 25% of revenue growth from 2012 to 2013. And so SunEdison is a top 3 installer like SolarCity, and it was also one of the top 5 U.S. solar fundraisers in 2013. And Goldman Sachs has forecasted strong growth for SunEdison, even though it has failed to reach profitability. And last year alone, it suffered a $587 million loss, which is enormous. Even so, though, Goldman Sachs is forecasting strong growth due to its large international footprint, with SunEdison having projects both in developed countries and developing nations. So they think that largely in developing nations where they might use clean energy as opposed to going coal and then clean like China has, as we've seen now they're struggling to go clean because of all the problems that's created. They think that's a huge potential market. And SunEdison's panels are actually unique from others, competitors, because they actually fit in line with the roofs instead of being put on top of the roof. So it gives a nice, much more sleeker look than some of the other companies. And lastly, I was First Solar. First Solar has the largest international presence of all these companies. It has the largest cash on hand, and it's one of the largest manufacturers. So it manufactures their own panels, then they install them. They also have these large arrays out in the West Coast that they charge utility companies to use. And in 2013, they generated $353 million of net income. So what is the future of solar technologies? Basically, there's three main things. It's going to be integrated into products, there will be residential market penetration, and then widespread grid use. So even today, we see solar panels being implemented into different technologies. So there's this solar battery pack right here. And recently, actually, Apple was awarded a patent for electronic device display module, which is a two-sided display for the lid of a MacBook that is made of electrochromic glass, allowing the opacity to be changed and for light to filter through and actually charge the MacBook. So we'll see where that goes in the future, but that's an interesting piece of technology to look forward to. And then also residential market penetration. So as financing and leasing programs are rolled out across the country, installation will become cheaper and more feasible for people looking to reduce their electricity bill. And also cheaper and more efficient panels will incentivize consumers to go green. And so then widespread grid use is the last kind of big thing for solar. And right now we're seeing in the West huge, massive arrays develop, and I'll actually show you a picture at the end, that are generating hundreds of megawatts of power a day. And so this is the growth of photovoltaic installations by quarter over the last 4 years. So you can see that 142 megawatts were installed in the first 3 months of 2010, and in the last 3 months of the 2013 year, 2,100 megawatts were installed. So that's over 1,000% growth in just like 3 years. And this is also the market price per panel. So it's gone down from $6 3 years ago to about $4.75, depending on whether it's for residential users, and for non-residential and utility users, it's even cheaper than that. And the reason why these are a little bit cheaper is because they're being bought on a much larger scale. So just like when you buy anything in bulk, it's going to be cheaper. So what I found across the board is that not all of the largest solar companies in the United States are profitable yet. And this is due in large part to the massive amounts of debt they've already accumulated over the first few years of their operations. And slowly they're paying these debts off, and they don't actually have to be profitable to pay these debts off. So for example, Edison might have made $1 billion last year, but decided to pay $1.5 billion of debt, and that's why they had a $0.5 billion loss. That's not the case, that's just an example. That being said, there are already some companies that display tremendous earnings and whose annual growth rates are in the double digits. And so as we can see, America's largest solar companies are achieving incredible growth numbers, and investors have actually flocked to some of these stocks to get in on the big gains. And although it has been difficult to ascertain the feasibility of alternative energy in the past decade, recent resurgence is a sign that alternative energy is going to break out over the next few years and even the next decade. So greater efficiency and continuing to lower costs are critical if these companies want to continue to sustain the double-digit growth they've incurred. And federal assistance in the form of grants and coding laws will only help to accelerate the growing, potentially lucrative alternative energy market. Thank you.